Hey guys, my name is Karleen. Welcome to my channel. This video is on hard spiritual awakening processes. We'll dive into everything, well, as much as I can in 20 minutes roughly around that. So we'll be talking about what a spiritual awakening is. Does everyone have one? What do they feel like? What do they encompass? What are the stages? How do we get through? How do we heal? And what do we do after? So my guides have been telling me that as the 2020s move on, a lot more people are going to be awakening. Like, this process has been happening and unfolding on the planet from time immemorial, but now it's all accelerating as the entire planet has been pushed and forced into a recalibration. And so a lot of people are going to be looking for answers, looking for, what am I going through? What am I experiencing? Like, am I going crazy? Am I crazy? Did I never know that I was crazy? How do I get through this? How do I heal from everything that's been torn up? And so we'll talk a little bit about that, and in the days and weeks to come, I'll be dispersing a little bit more information around that as well. A little bit to my story and background is that I had a very hard spiritual awakening just recently, and I've always considered myself woke, in a sense, or aware, but there's a whole different level that I needed to access for what I needed to do, or what the spiritual mission is for this expression of the divine, right? And so each one of us needs to access that to really be able to channel the soul energies, to really be able to channel the divine energies into this realm, which is also what we're meant to do, is transform energy, but also channel or funnel energy in. And so the spiritual awakening process for everyone is unique and different. It can last years. It can take years for some people. For other people, it's just a radical shift within months. And that's pretty much, I had the combination of years in one process, and then what should have been years in another process was condensed into a few weeks, which made it very intense and very, incredible. So I'll get into that further down the line. So let's start with, what is a spiritual awakening? What is that? And why do we even need spiritual awakenings? Well, we'll become so disconnected from our own source of being, our own true selves, that we've steered in a direction that is no longer sustainable. And sustainable coming from the point of, we've decided that we don't want to tolerate this anymore, right? It's you can imagine deep divers going to the bottom of the ocean, and as long as you want to keep going, it's like, it's fine with source. Go as far as you need to go. It doesn't matter, right? And it's not that it doesn't matter because source is indifferent. It's because source trusts, and source knows that it's like, okay, you're gonna come back someday. Go have adventures, right? Go see how far you can go. And so we've gotten to a point where we're in that ocean, and we're feeling the pressure from all around, and it's bringing our space suits, our deep diving suits, to a kind of breaking point where we're too far away from home. We're too far from original source. We're too far out of the zone of comfort, too far to have regular nourishments or recharge packs, too far from it all. And so we've decided that, you know what, we're done. We ran away from home, but now we just want to go home. That's all we want to do, is go home. So we're turning around and we're saying, okay, we're going home. So in a sense, it's a continual call from source, a continual ping, ping, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. But at the same time, it's our choice at this point in our evolutionary cycle to return to source, because we feel that we're too far out in the deep end. And so collectively, this desire has been growing and growing and growing and growing. We've called in help, we've called in assistance, we've called in guidance, we've called in as much as we could, but now we have to actually swing the ship around. And now we actually have to let go of the earth, the ground underneath our feet at the bottom of the ocean, because we don't want to keep going any deeper. We don't feel the need to go any deeper into this. And so we have to let go of that earth underneath our feet. And this can also be very disconcerting, right? As we free float back to the boat on the top of the waves, on the top of the ocean, or back to source in our case, right? So the spiritual awakening is a recalibration with your original source of being, without the ego and the pain through which the ego defines itself and from which it feeds as well, and we'll get into that, to fulfill a spiritual objective or mission. And that is also varying for each one of us, right? So it can be soft or hard, right, depending on the circumstances, but also depending on how hard the ego is, and also on any attached entities, ancestral energies, karmic bonds, you name it. So it's, for most of us, it's going to be a hard awakening, right? And for most of us, it's going to be coupled with times of despair, of sadness, of grief. But understand that these are just times, these are just these energies leaving the body, but also will feel immediately emotional resistance to things that are no longer, serving us, right? So does everyone have a spiritual awakening? Yes. Sooner or later, yes. And what does the soft feel like? Let's start off with that, because there's not much to say to a soft awakening. A soft awakening is you shedding your ego freely and just stepping into source energy. And this is rare, and it's usually been developed over lifetimes, but some of the ancient Indian yogis have written of such soft awakenings, or soft expansions, as I call it. And it comes through years of intense spiritual dedication, spiritual work dedication, where you simply open up, step out of your ego, drop it all, and move right back into source. For most of us, however, or allow the soul to expand, right? For most of us, however, it's not that easy, right? And so you're going to have to develop patience, compassion, love, and all of that in for yourself, but also for others that are going through this process to get through. So let's dive into a hard awakening. And a hard awakening can be tough if you're out there on your own and you're going through this. A hard awakening can make you feel like you're bipolar, schizophrenic, mental health issues abound. And that's probably why it's also become such a buzzword right now, why it's become such a thing right now around mental health, is because some people are actually going through a spiritual awakening process, but not understanding what they're experiencing or what they're going through. And so I don't want this to turn into a catch-all, okay? Like for other things, that where spirituality has turned into a catch-all for very real physical processes or very real mental health issues. But there are some cases where it's not necessarily a mental health issue. It is a spiritual awakening process, and people don't understand what they've been going through. And usually this kind of intensity, it flares up and then it goes away again, right? So it's not something that is consistent over your life. And that's one thing that you can see as well. Is this a mental health issue, or is this a spiritual awakening? It's something that has usually never happened to you before. You're overwhelmed with the energies. You don't know how to deal, and it feels weird. Everything feels off. And you don't have a history or a pattern within your family or within yourself. Then you might want to also have a look at, okay, what have I been doing spiritually? What have I been doing emotionally? What have my thoughts have been doing? What have I been focusing on in the last months or years? And that may give you a clue too. So this one, my guides are telling me, is going to become more and more frequent as the energy of the planet is shifted into a higher level. And we can see this playing out individually, but we'll also see countries too that are just going through like major shifts where people are like, oh my God, what are they doing and why? And this is all part of that purging, explosive releasing and letting go in order to move into a different level of being. So the what happens is sometimes in a hard release or a hard spiritual awakening, the ego has been jammed. And there's a lot of times is when people identify themselves with the ego. They identify themselves through the ego or as the ego, and they don't recognize, okay, this is just a function through which I work, or they think that is me, this is who I am. And that can be very problematic. And because when you're forced to release the ego and you're thinking I am the ego is telling you I'm gonna die, and you're thinking I'm gonna die, right? So you're not even open to that other part of consciousness of who you are, right? Who you truly are, which is eternal and ever unfolding and unkillable. You're completely trapped in this illusion of I'm going to die. So that's another thing that can really get people to also stop the awakening process or really drag it painfully out for very long times. So all these energies as well that have been suppressed by the ego, right? So all these emotions and energies which were toxic, weren't dealt with, weren't transformed, which have simply been repressed and kept as kind of like a storehouse of negative energy from which the ego can derive its existence and its fuel. It all breaks open. All of it just, it's like the floodgates are open to the basement, all the demons are released, and they all come whooping, flying out at once. And some of them have been down there so long that they're really completely twisted into unrecognizable states. So then we untwist that and have to learn, okay, what has this morphed into? What is really the underlying cause? What is the seed? What are the parents of this being? How did I create this, right? And taking acceptance, and responsibility without blame is all part of this process too. So it can get really intense when you're being swamped with everything at once, every memory in your life negative. Every emotional memory in your life negative. Add to that the amplification of feelings, your creative brain, your soul is coming in, your creativity is off the charts, your imagination is going wild, and there you have it. So it can really put you in a place where you think something's not right, like I'm mentally not okay. But it's just you purging everything, and we'll talk a little bit about more about that when we get through the stages. So the reason this is happening is because the vessel, right? So the body and the mind, the tool of the mind, right? The operating system has to be updated and upgraded in order for the higher energies or the higher soul to be able to come in and take up space, right? So higher energies, love can't reside where fear is. It's just not happening. So if you have a house full of fear in your mind and your subconscious and your body, pure love can't come in and stay there. It's a completely, it's not a frequency, because what would happen is it would slowly corrupt love. So what love does is it goes in and it blasts it all out. And this is what we're talking about with turning a light on in the darkness, right? When you turn on the light, it blasts that darkness out. When you let love in and you ask love to come in, it blasts the darkness out. But unfortunately, the way we experience it is not like just a light turning on in the room. It's literally seeing everything. The whole clutter, the whole mess, the whole garbage, the whole junk, everything that you've pushed under the rug, you turn that light on in the room, it is all exposed. And then we have to, do the work and clean it up. So let's talk about the stages and the hard spiritual awakening, and there are varying time frames for each stage. It all depends on you and where you're at and how you block things. You can be in one stage for years and another stage for days. You can be in one stage where somebody else was for days, and they're in it for years, so it's really a unique individual journey, right? It's all yours. And understand that all the energies that you're dealing with, there's nothing to be afraid of. I know, because I've been through it, that's easily said after you get through or before you walk in it. but they're all your energies. They've just been amplified and bottled up and stuffed down, and so it's like a champagne bottle when it kind of blows and it overwhelms you. But these are all your energies, and you can handle it. You can do it. So what are the stages? Well, usually it starts off with the realization, and these stages have been dictated to me, so I'm going with 13 stages, and they called it the 13 for the 13 apostles, the 12 apostles plus one, right? And so there are 13 stages, and the first one is usually the realization. The realization is, oh, okay, you know, there's something more out there to life than just this. There's, you know, something more out there to existence than just this. There's something more to me than just my body, right? So there's that first step into the recognition of duality, of the experience of duality. And so this can be quite an exciting time. You know, this is usually a time where people are at first like a little subtle. They're still in denial, but they're allowing it within themselves to kind of broaden in a sense. And so this realization process, it's usually very short. It's the minute you have that thought or that question, the journey begins. And the journey will, you know, take you where it needs to go, right? So the second is then the questioning, right? Here in this phase, people are gathering all the information they can, all the spiritual info they can, all the, you know, they're running from workshop to workshop. They're going to all the lectures. They're really diving into this. And stages can also overlap. So don't think it's like one and then closed off and then the next. And you can repeat stages as well. So it's not cut and dry, okay? But these are unfoldment cycles, let's call them, okay? So the questioning, right? I'm learning everything I can. I'm running from place to place. I'm buying the books. I'm, you know, doing all that. The experimenting. Now I start to work with it, right? I start to, you know, oh, maybe I do have a guide, and I kind of open up and allow that inside of. Then there's the choice, right? And sooner or later we all get to this point. Am I going to live a spiritual life or a material life? Am I going to be, you know, am I going to make that choice of only believing what I see? Sorry. Only believing what I see? Am I going to continue down this path of doing things that don't make me feel good, but they bring me more money? Am I going to, you know, what am I going to do with all this information that I've accumulated, right? Am I going to live by this and try to make a life by that? Or am I going to continue down the old pathway? So this choice of the material and mundane or the spiritual, everybody faces within themselves in some way, shape, or form. So after we've made the choice, and you know, you made that choice for spirituality, and you're made that choice that you're going to try this way, because that's the thing too about spiritual awakening, is that you have to make the choice, right? On some level, your soul has made a choice, and your soul has made a choice to awaken in this lifetime in your form. And it's not something that just God decided and then he dictates it over you, you know. It's a co-creation, it's a co-development, and on some level you've said okay to this. So even if you're going through a hard spiritual awakening, that's something that helped me that it's a co-creation. It's not something that is being lorded over me, right? It was a choice I made, and tough it is as it is, everything that is happening for my betterment. It's happening for my highest good. So you've made that choice. And now you start calling in, right? On a soul level, you start calling in God. You start calling in your angels. You start calling in your guides. You start calling in different energies. You hear the call. You follow a desire. You have this desire to get close to spirit, to get close to God, to unify, right? and you're getting the first results, the next stage, right? So you're working with spirit. You've moved out of the experimentation phase. You know you're a spiritual person. You've made the choice for a spiritual life. You're getting the results in your life. You're seeing that, and then the first temptation hits, right? So, or the first disappointment. Like sometimes temptation is cloaked in disappointment. So be mindful of that too, right? So the first disappointment, maybe you started a spiritual business and it's not getting off the ground. Maybe you've prayed and prayed and prayed and you don't feel supported. Maybe you initially saw healing happen in a case of illness and then there was a regression. Maybe, but that first temptation that comes in is to test you. Do you really want this? You know, are you really going to follow through on the spiritual life? Is this really your choice, right? So you then have the opportunity to say, you know what, all of this is bullshit. I'm going to go back to whatever it was I was doing before. But I'm guessing you didn't, because that's why we're here watching this video. So usually after that temptation, you know, you throw yourself into doubt. There's this period of doubt that comes in, and that kind of brings you into the dark night. And this is the thing that everybody kind of talks about. It's very individual how long your dark night of the soul goes. Like Mother Teresa, who's been, I find, unfairly criticized, right? Unfairly criticized by people that, but I'm not going to go there. It doesn't matter. But she went through a dark night of her soul most of her life, right? And that's clear in the letters that she wrote to the Vatican while she was in India, and to her sister as well. So it's very individual, but these doubts, they'll always be there, but you learn how to deal with them as you move on. But at first they're very overwhelming. And once you get through the dark night, right, and you're like, okay, like there is a God, there is that, there, you know, it didn't give me what I wanted, right? Because that's the first temptation. To get what you want on a material level. And when you don't get what you want on a material level, because whatever is happening for the highest good, and sometimes it doesn't look like the way that we would intend it, and then we're moving into disappointment and despair, and we're moving through this doubtful period where we're not sure of what we're doing, and we're not sure if we're connected, and we're not sure of anything. And we don't feel like we can ever bridge that gap. We can ever bridge that void to God. Afterwards, sometimes, you know, once we get through, we start the purge. And the purge is probably, we thought the dark night was rough, but the purge is really, whoa. Right? Because during the dark night, where we're calling in again, we're praying to God, we're asking for spirit to come in, we're asking for our soul to be purified, we're asking for help, we're asking for all of this. And then when it happens, it can be a rough ride. It can be a rough awakening. And this is, the purge is like the battle with your ego to release all the crap that it's sitting on through which it identifies itself. And the thing is, we start off with spirituality. A lot of people are going to start off with spirituality as a form of escape, as a form to better their material circumstances, and to, you know, make more of what they want in their life. There's a lot of people are going to see it as a hobby. They're going to, you know, dabble with it. And it's fine, you know, whatever, right? But sooner or later, the further along the path you go, the more real it gets. And the purge is pretty much as real as it can get, where you really realize what spirituality is about, and what it's truly about, and what it's and I'm only using that word loosely, right? So what your connection to your spirit is about, what a soul embodiment is really about, what the universe really is, who you truly are in this universe, all of that. And so as this higher energy, which you called in, is coming in, it's like we talked about in the beginning, it's turning on the light inside of you. And inside of you, you all of a sudden, you recognize the ego sees itself and gets scared, right? And when it gets scared, it gets vicious, it gets brutal. And this is a stage where you can feel like your mind is turning in on yourself. It's beating you up for showing it something that it didn't want to see. right? It's beating you up for showing it that it's not eternal, right? That it has a due date, that it is an artificial being, that it's not as real as it thought it was. It's beating you up for disconnecting from it. It's beating you up for making space within yourself for something that makes it unnecessary. So it can feel like your own mind has become your biggest enemy. And if you're stuck in this space where you're feeling like disconnected from anything anyways, and then within yourself you're feeling disconnected from your own mind, and you're looking out at the world and it feels like everything is reflecting your own negativity back to you, and you feel this mental disconnection as well, things can get really tough and interesting. And as the ego then sees, as it's looking around all the clutter in the basement and the rooms and the entire house, and it gets overwhelmed with despair and anger and self-remorse and aggravation and hatred, and all the negative energies come flying up from all the corners, it can be hard. And so all you can do is work through this, is each emotion that arises, work through it. There are tons of videos, and I'll be doing videos as well with meditations that help you soul heal, that help you release emotions, that help you deal with fear states, panic states, anxiety states. Allow the feelings to come up, because if you suppress them again, not only are you missing a valuable chance to change, you're causing yourself more damage than if you allow them to release. And it's going to feel counterintuitive, because your ego is there saying, we don't need to do this, we don't need to do this, right? Your body is going into panic state because your your mind is going crazy, saying we're in danger, meaning it's in danger. The body is receiving that message, is throwing out adrenaline and stress hormones, and it can get to the point like where it was for me, where you can feel your brain is like, is vibrating, is literally, but those are also other energies coming in, so higher energies coming in, recalibrating your neurons in your brains, and the neurons in your brain, and recalibrating your DNA, recalibrating your entire physical structure. Like, I can't eat certain foods anymore, like it's just not happening. Sometimes I force myself to, but only a little bit, because I need to ground down, so I know exactly, okay, this food is going to bring my vibration down to here, so I can do that, but otherwise I have no desire or necessity for it. So these stress hormones are being spread throughout your body, and this is like making everything worse. So the last thing you want to do is tap into that deep fear that is coming up. This is a primal fear. This is a fear of, because remember, your identity is connected to the ego, and the soul knows that it's not going to die, but you haven't flipped into that consciousness yet. So you're still in the ego consciousness, and the ego knows it's going to die. It sees its death. It sees what it's done. It doesn't like it, and it's telling you, we're going to die. I'm going to die. So in that moment, right, where this fear of death is coming up, and you just let go, and you say, okay, if this is the moment that I'm going to die, then this is it. A shift happens, right? A shift can happen, and you can allow that soul consciousness then to awaken within you, which is who you are anyways. It's just where your focus is at. And you're not going to die. You're absolutely not going to die. And you can then start with the ego dissolution, right? And the ego dissolution is this process of going through all the hurts and the pains that created all these beliefs and all the mindsets, all the hurts you did, but also all the hurts that were done to you, of course, that created beliefs and mindsets that dictated who you thought you were, right? Or who you felt you needed to be. So it's a process where you should be very gentle with yourself. Take your time. Some of you are going to have to take time off work. This is not something that you should be pushing, and I don't think you would be able to anyways, push yourself through working normally, and that can be tough, and that can add to the fears as well. But as you learn to deal with fear, as you learn to deal with anxiety, it gets better and better, especially because you're making room within yourself. You're cleansing out all the clutter, and you're allowing your soul to come in. You're not meeting your soul anymore after death. You're allowing it to come into this life right here. So the next stage after this chaotic, intense, extremely painful time of the purge is usually the release, where you just give up. You surrender, You surrender to the process. You allow whatever needs to wash through you. You understand Eckhart Tolle on deeper levels. You have more confidence in the process. You're developing trust again, right? And then comes the acceptance. You've accepted your soul energy into your body. You've accepted a new way of thinking. You've accepted this change, and you know that whatever happens, you're not going back, right? You've accepted that this is a better way forward for you. You've accepted that releasing the past is a good thing. Sorry, they're building next door, so I can't help that. The next up after the acceptance is you begin the process of embodiment, and this can take a while as well. It's not like overnight. For some people it is, for other people not so much, but it's a continual rebuilding. And for me it was, I noticed I couldn't think negative anymore. If I started thinking negatively or went back to my old patterns and habits, I started doing really bad. I threw myself, although I was getting up and out of everything, I threw myself backwards by watching videos I shouldn't have watched, by listening to things I shouldn't have listened to, and ingesting that information. And I really had to learn with my new mind that I'm going to have to take care of it, and not do the same things that I did before. So there's a rewiring process that does happen, and you don't want to revisit the old. You don't want to go back to the old. You want to take your time in the new phases to learn how to deal with this new vehicle of the mind, how to drive this one, right? And you want to take time to experiment and allow things to settle, right? So the embodiment can be a phase, this can take days, weeks, months, years even, right? Depending on your process. And it is your process. There's no good, no bad. This is your journey. That's it, right? And then the last one is the unfoldment. So now you've embodied, and these two kind of tend to overlap as well, because a lot of people already start on their new mission during the embodiment process. And so now the soul is in the body, and it starts its mission. It starts to unfold into the world around it, and to imprint itself on the world instead of the world imprinting itself on it, which is what had happened before, right? Which is why an inversion needed to happen, or a flipping needed to happen, which can be, like I said, very painful, right? So before you had an essence which had been imprinted upon by the world, and now you flip. So what can we do to support during these stages, especially during the dark night and the purge and all of that? Well, homeopathy is something that has helped me tremendously. Inner work, like doing the work as each emotion arose, I looked at that. I looked at what hadn't I released? What was I still holding on to? Whom hadn't I forgiven? Whom was I still holding a grudge against? Who was I thinking negatively of? What did I do that I hadn't forgiven myself for? It can be too that you're even healing past lifetimes or ancestral lineages, so this will rise up too. You may be seeing individuals or beings, and you just somehow know that was you in a past life, which is also what happened to me. So I released old karma, right? Past life expressions of myself, and released all that. And I also had a massive entity release that had been coming down the ancestral line. So that can be disconcerting as well when you have a full-on exorcism happening, and afterwards you have this empty space that you need to fill, and you're discombobulated and confused, and you don't know why you're feeling the way you're feeling until you realize, oh my gosh, this is space I never inhabited in myself because this being was always there. So realizing that and releasing that and allowing the Holy Spirit to come in and fill that space and uplift you, and it's really, it's a beautiful process, but it can be very, very, very intense. So inner work, meditation, always checking into that field of peace within you, right? So when you're feeling bubbly, anxious, things are moving within you, meditating on that field of peace, expanding that field of peace, tapping into that field of peace becomes more and more important. You want to do that as often as you can, right? Breathing exercises, breathing in and out. And what I like to do is the one where you breathe in for 5 seconds, hold your breath for 6 seconds, and breathe out for 7 seconds. When you breathe out, a long breathe out stimulates your parasympatheticus, which gets you to relax, right? So these movements, right, because you've got so much adrenaline through fear and anxiety in your body, which is pushing you to get out of the situation. So you need to do something to decrease it. And the last thing you want to do is enforce these pathways of fear within your brain. So you don't want to, without working on your fears, just get out and run or get out and do exercise. You want to work on your fears first, face them first, no matter what. And then you go out and you get rid of the adrenaline in your body, right? By exercising it out. Nature, spend lots of time in nature. Nature heals. Nature is, you are a part of nature, and allowing that flow of energy to flow through you and recalibrate and realign you can be intensely healing as well. So, and what happens after you've been through this, or at least after you've been through the purge and the release and the acceptance, and you're ready to step back into life again, right? What happens is you're going to probably get a new set of guides. You're going to get a new directive. You're going to, because there has been an inversion. It's like you've been flipped out of one universe and pushed into another, right? And so you're going to feel something else coming up for you in way of work, expression, self-expression, your relationships. You may even move where you're living, your guides, your entire personality, what you radiate, your feeling, how you feel about yourself, how you think about yourself, because all this has been shifted during the purge, right? So higher spirit's not going to come into a vessel that's holding grudges against family members and loved ones, or holds remorse for things that they did to other people, or hates themselves, or doesn't like themselves. It doesn't come in and fix all that for you. Like, you actively have to engage with these energies and dissolve them, right? And like I said, I'll be putting out videos on how to do that, and but there are also already tons of videos on the internet for those of you that need it, like right now. So accept these changes in your life, because there's no point in well, you're past the point of fighting yourself now if you've had a proper ego dissolution, right? So now you're rebuilding a new ego, and you're going to probably go through many more ego dissolutions, but it's going to, after that first hard one, it's going to become easier and easier, because okay, I know what's going on, and you just let it go, right? So get yourself into spaces also a lot of times where you can just allow your soul to flow. Get creative, start painting, drawing, singing, dancing, writing for some of you, right? It's really super important. And just ask the right questions. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing now of yourself, right? What's the next direction for me now of yourself? What is my soul mission? What am I here to do of yourself? How can I become a better healer? How can I become a better motivator or inspirer of yourself, right? What does it mean for me to do that? Don't just do something because this is what it's supposed to look like. Just really look and see, how is your soul guiding you into what it is that you're meant to be doing. And this is a phase where you can really follow your highest joy, right? So before that, while you're still in ego, you're following your highest joy based on what you thought you missed out on in life, right? But now your highest joy, it's not a joy of it's a joy of being, right? It's a joy of being. And so now the answers might be different, and you'll feel much more fulfilling your soul desires and your soul journey than you will fulfilling your ego deficiencies, or what you perceive to be ego deficiencies. So that was a quick video on spiritual awakening. And if you're going through this process, like, really have a lot of compassion with yourself. Talk kindly to yourself. Be nice to yourself. Allow. Trust. Have faith. You are living in a beautiful universe. You are living in a loving universe. You are living in a wonderful universe. There's only one state, and that is I am. Right? And because of that, there's only love. So trust and have faith, even though you may be in a dark space and you may be feeling like there's only darkness around you and you're overwhelmed by it all. It is an illusion. Fear, darkness, it's all an illusion. And you can ask for help to come in, ask for help to heal the source of your pain. And then it will finally dissipate, and it will finally leave you after you've learned the lesson by healing it. God bless all of you. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh, make sure to check out my website. And of course, if you would like to book a session with me, I'm more than happy to get to know you and work with you. Bye.